Good day, Canada. Good evening, Asia. It's Thursday, 12 p.m. here in Toronto, and it's time for a regular webinar on immigration and visas to Canada. My name is Alex Davidson, and today's webinar is dedicated to Express Entry System, most specifically to common errors and mistakes many applicants make when applying. We receive numerous emails from Express Entry applicants in need of assistance every day. And I believe now it's a good time to share our experience, summary, and our observations to all of you. First, a few words about the Express Entry system itself. Despite the fact that it's up and running for 8 months already, many people still do not quite understand how the system is actually working. So we're often asked about the quote-to-quote passmark, processing time of the Express Entry quote-to-quote immigration program, while neither of these actually apply to Express Entry. Express Entry by itself is not just another immigration program. In fact, it is not an immigration program at all. And while there is a numerical criteria used to select Express Entry candidates, it has nothing to do with passmark in its general meaning. Processing time, well, I would say it also does not apply, simply because the Express Entry system does not actually process anything. Simply put, the Express Entry system is not more than just a database. Its other name is expression of interest, which I believe much better describes the entire concept. Anyone willing to immigrate to Canada can express his or her interest in immigration by creating an account in this expression of entry, or call it Express Entry system. Say, for example, students who have graduated from a college or university in Canada, foreign workers, skilled workers from abroad, all of them initially show their intention to immigrate through this universal system. The system itself is very similar to any classic job search portal. Anyone willing to get a job could create an account on this portal and provide details about himself or herself, describing education, work experience, certification, achievements, etc., etc. Anything that a potential employer might be interested in. So similarly, a candidate willing to immigrate to Canada creates an account with the Express Entry system and provides information about him or herself, based on which Canadian immigration authorities can assess the candidate and determine whether he or she will benefit the Canadian economy. A successful candidate, relatively young, with good English or French, sufficient education and work experience, and so on, receives a so-called invitation to apply, which allows him or her to apply for permanent residence in Canada under a certain immigration program: Federal Skilled Worker, Federal Skilled Trades, Canadian Experience Class, Provincial or Territorial Nominee Program, or stream. Therefore, here's the first mistake. Express Entry is not an immigration system at all. Instead, I would say it's a pre-screening system designed to guarantee that the number of applications for permanent residency in Canada will always match the demand of Canadian economy. With Express Entry in place, we won't ever face a situation where the number of submitted immigration applications exceed the number in the yearly immigration plan, which would in turn create a huge backlog and increase processing times to many, many years. That was the underlying reason why Express Entry system has been introduced. Now, there are two stages in creating an Express Entry account. First, a candidate, not an applicant yet, must answer several simple questions about his or her name, age, marital status, employment offer, or relatives in Canada, and proficiency in English or French. After that, a preliminary verdict is made about a candidate's eligibility. If a candidate is found eligible, he or she is allowed to proceed, create an express entry account, and populate it with information. But what does it mean if a candidate receives a message? Based on your answer, you appear to be not eligible. How does that come? Say, for example, a candidate has language test results in hand, education, and education with credentials properly assessed. So what could be the reason to say that she or he is ineligible? Though it's not a secret that during the early months of Express Entry, such situations were not uncommon simply due to the system errors. Presently, if someone receives such a message, the primary reason is legit and simple. Based on the answers, a candidate obviously does not meet Express Entry requirements of any immigration program connected with Express Entry. So, in general scenario, it often means that a candidate is unable to reach a 67 points pass mark of the Federal Skilled Worker Program, the only immigration program today that allows to immigrate without having a job offer in Canada, without provincial sponsorship, relatives somewhere in prairies, or a Canadian university diploma. So this is the most common mistake candidates often make. They simply do not assess their profile against the requirements of the Federal Skilled Worker Program while hoping to be invited to apply under the same. So before creating an Express Entry account, simply take your time, usually it's just a few minutes, carefully calculate your points, and if your total is 67 or more, go ahead, you will be accepted by Express Entry Pool. If you're confused on how to assess your chances, well, come to us and we will gladly help. Later on today, I will share with you our direct contacts of our trusted partners in Bangladesh and our private contacts as well. Now, when a profile has been successfully created, you can see your Express Entry score online. But this is the second common issue. Why the score is too low, and if there is a chance to increase it, that's the question lots and lots of applicants are asking. Based on our experience, there are a few things very often overlooked by candidates and those overlooked scores may dramatically help you to increase the ranking. First of all, simply ask your accompanying spouse to take IELTS test. I know it's not always comfortable, but even if he or she is not as good in English as you are, even the small IELTS test result, right, like 4.5, may be sufficient to positively affect the Express Entry score. Also, we often see candidates neglect to provide complete up-to-date information about their employment, listing only the most recent one, or the most recent and the previous one as well. And this is a serious mistake that may drop your Express Entry score significantly because, well, by omitting what you think is unimportant old story, you simply cut off your total period of work experience. Again, take your time. Include every employment that you have in hand, and you would receive top points for this factor. I can share with you a real-life example here. A candidate with a good IELTS score cannot get needed points simply because his work experience, and that was him, is only 1 year. After a detailed discussion, we find out that in fact he has worked in other places legally, and that was way before, and he could actually claim up to 3 years of work experience, and those 3 years could be supported by legit documents. Right? It just again takes time to think, to consider your profile correctly to find out where you can get those extra points. Now, another common mistake or another common thing which is usually overlooked is education credentials assessment. I don't know why, but for some odd reason, about 80% of candidates coming to us somehow believe that assessment is needed for the principal applicant only. It's a serious mistake which takes so needed points from you, from your profile. Well, yes, you would not get much, you won't get like 20, 30, 50 points for education credentials assessment of your spouse. But if you think of it seriously, you would see that a few points for your spouse IELTS, a few more points for education, a few points for your experience would already make a huge, huge difference. So do not overlook those. Yeah, it's better to take time to prepare and apply or add later on your needed experience and your additional score. So now looking into the next tricky thing is the NOC code. NOC, as many of you may know, stands for the National Occupation Classification. That's the official Canadian occupations reference that contains information about all possible occupations and even some more. NOC code is the 4-digit number that corresponds to a specific occupation in this classification. Why is it important to know your NOC score and to select it correctly when creating and filling an Express Entry account? Well, many of you might think it's obvious, for others it's not. But the matter is that every NOC code, or every occupation, put it simple, falls into one of several categories: 0, A, B, C, or D. Occupations are categorized based on so-called skill level. So for example, category 0 includes all managerial occupations. A includes occupations that generally require a university education. Occupations in category B usually require at least a completed college course. As such, occupations in categories 0, A, and B are so-called high-skilled occupations. Low-skilled occupations fall in the category C, which usually do require only high school education, and D, which does not require any formal education at all. And now here's the trick. Only the work experience falling into the NOC category 0A or B is counted towards the total period of employment that earn points for an Express Entry candidate. If some of experience falls into the NOC categories C or D, it will not add anything to the Express Entry score. This information is available on the CIC website and in the Express Entry system itself, but usually candidates do not pay much attention to supplementary information when they fill up their profiles. Well, and this often ends up with incorrect NOC codes chosen and low Express Entry score assigned. Be sure to pick up your NOC code very carefully. If required, step aside for a second. Visit the Employment and Social Development Canada website to browse the NOC and find out which NOC category your occupation falls into. Please note that there often are very similar occupations that fall into different NOC categories. So for example, a certain specialist may fall into the category C, while a supervisor specialist in the same field would be listed in category B. The simplest example which comes into mind would be, I would say, McDonald's team member. So that's the lowest position, which is obviously not accepted by the federal skilled worker category. But if you're a shift manager, which is slightly above the crew member, you already fall, surprisingly, but you already fall into the B category. So the lesson here is to think and analyze your work experience, compare your job duties to the NOC category, and typically be smart when you're using the NOC matrix. There are many examples when your previous work experience in C category could be classified as B if you look at the situation from a different angle. If you look at your job duties carefully, you would find out that maybe you can use it as B. Therefore, this experience would count to add additional points for you. Now, in some cases, it is hard to decide who's going to be the principal express entry candidate. We sometimes see a situation when both a husband and a wife have good IELTS, have good education, and pretty good experience. We've actually seen situations where this question was really hard to answer. But there is a simple workaround. Nothing, absolutely nothing, would prevent you from creating two express entry accounts, one with you as the principal applicant, another with your spouse in this role. Just be sure to answer yes to the question, have you applied to CIC and Express Entry before when creating the second account? It's not cheating, it's not lying. You simply increase your chances of being selected, and in fact, you increase your visibility by having separate Express Entry and job bank account for every applicant. Just do not forget the fact that employers also look at the job bank. It's not a myth, and candidates are selected from the job bank. So having two Express Entry accounts for your wife and for yourself would actually play its role and would increase your chances, simply statistically. Now, what if you decided to retake an IELTS test? Express Entry allows you to update the information at any time, which is absolutely wonderful, by the way, right? And you're absolutely free to provide updated IELTS results. And probably you would do so if your second IELTS score is higher than the one already on file. But say, what if your overall IELTS score is the same? Does that mean that your attempt was wasted? Necessarily so. Remember that IELTS module scores have different weight in the Express Entry ranking. Chances are that even though your second IELTS certificate shows exactly the same overall score, your Express Entry score in total would go up just because you've received an extra half point for the more important module and lost half point for another not so important in the Express Entry ranking. Simply give it a try and update your IELTS details in the Express Entry account. You'll see your Express Entry score updated very soon, and in fact, you'll be able to undo the changes and put the older IELTS back on file again if that is necessary. Now, last but not least, you can get additional 600 points, but do it carefully and considerably. We all know that we all know what makes a successful Express Entry candidate, right? 600 points for a job offer or for a provincial nomination. So given that it's really very difficult to arrange a job in Canada, and there is so much scam in this area, lots and lots of so-called crooks, advisors working in Asia would promise to arrange you a job for money, which is, by the way, absolutely illegal. Why won't you consider applying under a provincial program instead? Here's the catch. Today, provincial programs undergo major changes, and you'll most likely have to do some homework research to understand how they're working with Express Entry. Some may select candidates directly from Express Entry pool. Some may require applying to a province separately. For example, Manitoba requires separate application. New Brunswick could select people from the pool, and some already adopt a system which is similar to Express Entry itself, which is, by the way, for example, Quebec is planning to do. Give it a chance. You may end up in receiving 600 extra points in Express Entry, a sure enough invitation to apply for permanent residency in Canada. That is a much better and much safer way compared to buying or trying to buy or attempting to buy job offer in Canada, which will never ever end up in a legit job. Now, let's wrap up in here. So in a nutshell, Express Entry is a wonderful, flexible tool allowing you to immigrate in Canada faster using multiple ways and using multiple legal scenarios. You simply have to be aware of these ways and be able to employ them carefully. Remember that provincial programs still have doors open for many applicants who would like to come in here. It's our job to help you to select the right pathway, to support you on the way, and warn you about possible pitfalls on the road. On this slide, you could see contacts of our trusted partners in Bangladesh, Visa Center. They're skilled, experienced, and would be able to help you at any time. You could also, if you'd like to, address your questions to us directly and be absolutely assured that we would listen and we would assist. Now, the final point for today is that I have my personal request. Subscribe, spread the word, tell your friends what we're doing, and follow our weekly webinars. They are absolutely free for anyone wishing to participate. And please give us your like, give us +1 on Google Plus, because we work for you. It's always a pleasure to see that you help us too. Thank you all for coming in and listening to us today. Next time we'll continue talking about provincial immigration and we will discuss Ontario Provincial Nominee Program. Thank you for joining us, and for now, and goodbye.